I want to talk a couple of minutes on fear because it's one of the things that almost everyone that goes through this business acquisition journey faces. And yesterday I had two conversations which showed the polar opposites of that. The first was with Gabriel. You've heard about that. Gabriel, he has completed another set of transactions. As I said to him, what are you now, 26, 27? He said, 27, 28, not really sure. Okay, it's a good problem to have, but it turned out to be 28 locations. In that discussion, we talked a lot about running the current business, some of the challenges he's having, how we can fix those challenges. He asked about leadership skills, we talked about that, and we talked about what's next for him in terms of doing more acquisitions, larger acquisitions, etc. There was not a single discussion on complaining. There was not a single discussion on what he was afraid of. That's in all my talks with Gabriel, who I've mentored since August 2019, I don't ever remember a fear discussion coming up. So think about that. In contrast to that, talked to a mentee yesterday, smart guy. He has made up to, I think, 990 some odd cold calls in a week. However, he was getting financials, but he was letting those financials sit. He was getting calls from prospects that were not returned by him. And I said to him, and this goes back several months, but it's resurfaced. I said to him, just take those 5 financials, get with your CFO. You're going to spend a half hour to analyze them and then get back, okay? So he did that. He ended up getting an LOI that came to pass out of that. But he's mentioned this week that he's got a lot of financials and numerous calls that he's not returning to sellers. And I said to him, let's take a look at that for a second. Let's end up talking about why that is. Either subconsciously or consciously, there is something you're afraid of. And as many people have said, at some point this gets very real. It might actually happen, kind of thing. So he said, yeah, and he's just, as I say, he's a smart guy. He said, yeah, I wonder that I do all this work and then the business falls apart and then I end up going bankrupt and my story's on CNN. Wow, okay. Probably even if you did go bankrupt, your story wouldn't be on CNN. But think about that. He is focused on the fear of that. Outwardly, confident sounding guy. He can make cold calls. He can do all these things. This week, he ended up saying, well, rather than return calls, I read a bunch of books. And he read books on quantum mechanics. He said he read a Horatio Alger's story. Maybe that was okay. But how would quantum mechanics help you in this process, as opposed to spending time to go through the financials and getting back to these sellers? When he did get back previously to some sellers, they said, yeah, I wondered what happened to you. I ended up selling that business. So think about that in your own circumstance. Think about what is holding you back and how you move forward. I saw a piece today on eagles. And when eagles build a nest, they put thorns at the bottom of the nest. They then cover that with feathers, a soft, fluffy material. And as the young eagles grow, the mother ends up taking off the feathers and throwing them away until it gets more and more uncomfortable and all that is left in that nest are the thorns, at which point the little eagles disappear and decide it's too painful to stay, they're going to leave. So the same thing is true with fear. If fear is eating away at you, the fear of failure, fear of success, whatever that is, at some point, hopefully, the fear of staying stuck where you are is more, and that pain is more than taking the next step. I have a mentee who literally said, I'm terrified to make cold calls. I said to him, just make 5 tomorrow, 5. He ended up making a lot more than that. But he eventually got to the point that I think it was 1,006 cold calls in a week he made. And what he found was what he was afraid of in a few calls disappeared. So a couple people hung up on him, asked not to call again, whatever. But the process of doing what you're afraid of will almost always take that fear and push it aside. So I would encourage you to think about that. Think about what is holding you back. If it's something in fear, sometimes thinking, what's the worst case scenario? And if I can survive that, which almost always you can, then let's go forward. But a better solution is to focus on what you want and keep your mind off what you don't want. Each time you go back to a scenario of what you don't want, it's a distraction. Just like a YouTube video, just like a text message on your phone, but you are distracting yourself from what you could do that would bring you closer to the goals that you have set for yourself and the affirmations, hopefully, that you have written, that you go through to remind you what you want to accomplish. So, if you want to understand how to get started, there's conversation starters over on brucewhipple.com. You can certainly go over there. If you want to go directly, just brucewhipple.com/get class. And if you would, click the like button, click the subscribe button so you get more of these videos. I do one each week. But remember, fear is something you can conquer if you push through it. And on the other side of fear and pushing through it and taking action is oftentimes success, which is hopefully what you are trying to achieve.